Ambassador Taman Kang stared out the window of his shuttle as it approached the massive station floating in space. The diplomatic hub was enormous, larger than any structure humans had ever built. It gleamed silver and blue under the light of the distant star. Ships from dozens of alien species moved around it like insects around a hive. Taman felt a flutter of nervousness in his chest, but he pushed it down. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for. First contact had happened 3 years ago, when a coalition scout ship discovered Earth's radio signals. Since then, Earth had been sending messages, trying to establish peaceful relations. Finally, the Galactic Coalition had agreed to meet. He was 47 years old and had spent most of his life negotiating deals between corporations and governments. He believed in the power of words, of finding common ground. Today, he would represent all of humanity. The pressure was immense, but he was ready. Next to him sat his assistant, a young woman named Bora, who handled the technical details of the mission. She was reviewing their presentation on a tablet, her face focused and serious. "Everything looks good," she said quietly. "The gifts are secured. The presentation is loaded. We are ready." Taman nodded. Earth had prepared carefully for this meeting. They brought samples of human art, music, and scientific research. They offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Most importantly, they came with open hands and peaceful intentions. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud. Taman straightened his suit and took a deep breath. The airlock opened and he stepped into the station. The interior was overwhelming. The ceiling soared high above, covered in lights that mimicked a starry sky. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated or slithered. One creature looked like a mass of tentacles wrapped around a glowing core. A guide approached them. It was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. It spoke through a translator device that hung around its neck. "Ambassador Kang, welcome to Talvina Station. I am Guide Moran. Follow me, please." They walked through long hallways filled with alien technology. Taman tried not to stare, but everything was so new, so strange. Finally, they reached a large chamber. At the far end sat a raised platform, and on that platform sat the being who would decide humanity's fate. High Arbiter Velshan was reptilian, covered in dark green scales. His eyes were golden and cold. He was ancient, that much was obvious. He carried himself with the weight of centuries. When he looked at Taman, it was the look of a predator examining prey. "So," Velshan said, his voice deep and echoing in the chamber, "these are the humans. How small you are." Taman felt the insult but kept his face neutral. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "High Arbiter, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Humanity is honored to be here. We come in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation with the Galactic Coalition." Velshan made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. "Peace. Yes. All primitive species speak of peace when they first leave their worlds. Tell me, Ambassador, what does humanity have to offer the Coalition? We have been traveling the stars for thousands of your years. What can you possibly give us that we do not already have?" Taman had prepared for this question. He gestured to Bora, who activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared in the air, showing landscapes, cities, and people. "We offer diversity," Taman said. "Human culture is rich and varied. We have art, music, and literature that spans thousands of years. We offer scientific knowledge, particularly in medical research and environmental adaptation. We offer friendship and a fresh perspective." Velshan barely glanced at the hologram. He waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Irrelevant. Your art means nothing to us. Your science is centuries behind our own. Let me be clear about your situation, Ambassador. Humanity has established colonies on 3 systems near Coalition space. These systems contain resources we need. You will surrender your claims to these systems." Taman felt his stomach drop. This was not how the negotiation was supposed to go. "High Arbiter, those systems were uninhabited when we arrived. We have invested years of work and billions in resources. Thousands of humans live there now. Surely we can find a compromise." "There is no compromise. The Coalition has decided. You will evacuate those systems within 6 months. In return, we will grant you probationary status. You may continue to exist in your home system, and perhaps in time you may be allowed limited access to Coalition space." "And if we refuse?" Taman asked, his voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. Velshan's golden eyes narrowed. For a moment he said nothing. Then he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Then the coalition will remove you by force. We have dealt with stubborn species before. It never ends well for them. You have 48 hours to consult with your government. I suggest you advise them to be reasonable. The meeting was over. Guards escorted Taman and Bora back to their shuttle. Once inside, Taman collapsed into his seat. His hands were shaking. That was not a negotiation, Bora said quietly. That was a threat. Yes, Taman agreed. He stared at the communication console. He needed to contact Earth immediately. But what would he tell them? That humanity's dream of joining the galactic community was a fantasy? That the coalition saw them as nothing more than insects to be crushed? Meanwhile, 3 light hours away, Commander Heun-Yu sat in the captain's chair of the UES Reckoning. The ship hung in the darkness of space, invisible to coalition sensors. Its stealth systems were some of the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. Hyun was 39 years old, a veteran of the belt conflicts that had almost torn human space apart 20 years ago. She had learned hard lessons about violence and survival. She trusted in preparation, in having the bigger gun and never being caught off guard. Next to her, Jiwon Park monitored the sensor displays. Jiwon was brilliant, one of the best engineers in the fleet. She was also anxious, constantly worrying about things going wrong. "Commander," Jiwon said, her voice tight, "I am picking up increased activity around the diplomatic station. Coalition warships are moving into position." Heun leaned forward, studying the tactical display. Jiwon was right. There were far too many military vessels for a simple diplomatic meeting. "How many ships?" she asked. 12 capital ships, at least 30 smaller vessels. "Commander, that is enough firepower to destroy a planet." Heun felt a cold certainty settle in her gut. This was not a diplomatic mission. This was a trap. "Send an encrypted message to Ambassador Kang," she ordered. "Tell him we are detecting unusual military activity. Advise caution." "Yes, Commander." Heun stared at the screen. The Reckoning was ready. It had been built in secret over the past decade, constructed in hidden shipyards far from Earth. The government had hoped they would never need it. Heun had known better. She reached up and touched the control panel above her head, running through weapons checks in her mind. The main cannon, the missile batteries, the point defense systems, everything was ready. She just hoped they would not need to use any of it. Taman spent the night preparing his report to Earth. The small quarters on his shuttle felt cramped and stuffy. He recorded his message 3 times before he was satisfied. Each version sounded more desperate than the last. The response from Earth came quickly. The government was shocked but not entirely surprised. They had hoped for better, but they had planned for worse. Their instructions were clear. Go back to the negotiating table and try again. Offer concessions. Give up one system if necessary, but protect the other 2. Keep humanity safe. When Taman returned to the station the next day, he came with a new proposal carefully written by Earth's best diplomats. He would offer to surrender the smallest of the 3 colonies, a mining outpost with only a few hundred people. In exchange, humanity would ask for full coalition membership and protection for their remaining settlements. It was a painful compromise, but it was fair. Taman believed Velshan would accept it. He was wrong. When he entered the negotiation chamber, Velshan was not alone. A dozen coalition officials sat behind him, their faces unreadable. The atmosphere in the room was different today, colder, more dangerous. Taman bowed and began his prepared speech. He explained Earth's position. He emphasized humanity's desire for peace. He presented the compromise, laying out the terms clearly. When he finished, Velshan sat in silence for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the chamber. "You misunderstand your position, Ambassador," Velshan said. "You think this is a negotiation. It is not. Let me explain what will actually happen." He stood up, his massive form towering over the room, his golden eyes fixed on Taman like a snake watching a mouse. "You will surrender all 3 systems. You will also pay an annual tribute to the coalition, in resources and technology. A coalition governor will be assigned to oversee human space. Your military will be disbanded. Your government will operate under coalition supervision. These are our terms. There is no compromise." Taman felt the blood drain from his face. This was not diplomacy. This was conquest. "That is completely unacceptable," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "You are asking us to give up our freedom. Humanity will never agree to this." Then humanity will be destroyed, Velshan said simply. He gestured to one of his officials who activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air showing Earth, its colonies, its ships. We know where you live, Ambassador. We know your population centers, your defenses, your weaknesses. If you refuse our generous offer, we will take what we want by force. Your colonies will burn. Your fleets will be scattered. Earth itself will become a subject world. Taman stood frozen. He had been in difficult negotiations before, but never like this. Never with someone who held all the power and felt no need to hide their cruelty. You have 1 hour to contact your government, Velshan continued. Tell them our terms. Tell them what happens if they refuse. I will be waiting for your answer. Taman turned to leave, but Velshan spoke again. Oh, and Ambassador? Do not think about trying to run. My guards have orders to prevent you from leaving until we have your government's agreement. Consider yourself our guest. The doors slid shut behind Taman with a heavy thud. He was trapped. In the small waiting room, Bora was pale with fear. The 2 coalition guards standing by the door made no effort to hide their weapons. They are not letting us leave, she whispered. We are hostages, Taman nodded grimly. He pulled out his communication device and tried to send a message to Earth. The device beeped an error. The coalition was jamming their signal. He tried again, this time using the emergency frequency. It took several attempts, but finally a weak signal got through. He sent a brief coded message. Hostage situation. Demands unacceptable. Coalition preparing military action. On the reckoning, alarms blared through the ship. Heian was on her feet instantly, running to the command center. Jiwon was already there, her face white with fear. Commander, we received a distress signal from Ambassador Kang. It is heavily encrypted, but the message is clear. He is being held hostage. Show me the tactical situation, Heian ordered. The main screen lit up with sensor data. The coalition fleet had moved into attack formation around the diplomatic station. Energy signatures were spiking as they charged their weapons. This was not a defensive posture. This was preparation for war. They are going to attack our colonies, Jiwon said, her voice barely above a whisper. They are going to make an example of us. Heian stood perfectly still, her mind racing through options. She could wait for orders from Earth, but that would take hours. By then, Taman might be dead, and the coalition fleet might already be on its way to human space. She could maintain their stealth and hope the situation resolved itself. But she knew it would not. The coalition had shown their hand. They intended to crush humanity, and they were not going to stop. Or she could act now. Reveal the reckoning. Show the coalition that humanity was not as defenseless as they believed. It was the hardest decision of her life. If she was wrong, she would start a war that could destroy Earth. But if she did nothing, Earth would be destroyed anyway. She thought about her training. About the oath she had sworn to protect humanity. About the people living on those colonies, unaware that death was coming for them. She made her choice. All hands, battle stations, she said, her voice calm and clear. Weapons, bring all systems online. Engineering, I want full power to the engines and shields. Navigation, plot an intercept course for the diplomatic station. The crew moved instantly, years of training taking over. Throughout the ship, lights changed from blue to red. Weapon systems hummed to life. The massive main cannon began its charging sequence. Jiwon looked at her commander with wide eyes. Commander, if we drop the stealth field, they will see us. All of them. There is no going back from this. Heian met her gaze steadily. I know, but they took our ambassador hostage. They are threatening our people. We did not start this fight, but we are going to finish it. Drop the stealth field. Jiwon hesitated for only a second, then nodded. Her fingers flew across her console. Stealth field deactivating in 3, 2, 1. The reckoning dropped its invisibility like a curtain falling away. For the first time, the coalition saw what humanity had been building in secret. The ship was massive, 3 times the size of the largest coalition battlecruiser. Its hull was matte black, covered in angular armor plates that seemed to swallow light. Hundreds of weapon ports bristled along its length. At its center, the main cannon pointed forward like the finger of an angry god. In the diplomatic station, alarms screamed. Coalition officers stared at their screens in shock and disbelief. Velshan watched the tactical display with growing horror. Where had this ship come from? The humans were supposed to be weak, their technology primitive. This vessel radiated power unlike anything he had ever seen. Heiun's voice came over every communication channel. cold and hard as steel. "This is Commander Heon Yu of the United Earth Ship Reckoning. You are holding our ambassador hostage. You have threatened our people. You have made a terrible mistake. Release Ambassador Kang immediately and withdraw your fleet or face the consequences." For a moment there was complete silence. Then Velshan began issuing orders. His voice was sharp with panic. "All ships, open fire! Destroy that vessel!" It was the worst decision he ever made. The Coalition fleet opened fire with everything they had. Dozens of ships launched plasma torpedoes that streaked through space like falling stars. Energy beams, bright enough to blind, lanced toward the Reckoning from multiple directions. Inside the Reckoning, Jiwon's hands moved across her console with practiced speed. "Point defense systems active," she called out. Intercepting incoming fire. The ship's outer hull erupted with thousands of small turrets. They fired in precise patterns, creating a web of defensive fire around the Reckoning. Plasma torpedoes exploded harmlessly as the point defense weapons destroyed them. Energy beams struck the ship's armor, but the composite plating dispersed the heat across its surface. The Coalition's weapons, powerful enough to destroy cities, barely scratched the human Dreadnought. On the bridge, Heon watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Reckoning had been designed for exactly this scenario. Every system, every piece of armor, every weapon had been built with one purpose in mind: survival against overwhelming odds. "Damage report," she ordered. "Minimal damage to outer hull sections. Shields holding at 98%. "All systems operational," reported the tactical officer. Heon allowed herself a small smile. The engineers had done their job well. Now it was time to do hers, target their flagship. "Main cannon, single shot. Fire when ready." Jiwon entered the firing solution. The main cannon, a massive railgun that ran the entire length of the ship, had been charging since they dropped stealth. Now it was ready. The weapon fired with no sound in the vacuum of space, but inside the ship everyone felt it. The entire vessel shuddered as electromagnetic coils accelerated, a tungsten projectile to a fraction of light. Speed. The projectile crossed the distance between the Reckoning and the Coalition flagship in less than 2 seconds. When it struck, the results were catastrophic. The Coalition flagship was enormous, a proud vessel that had served for over a century. It carried shields powerful enough to deflect asteroid impacts. Its armor could withstand nuclear explosions. None of it mattered. The kinetic projectile punched through the shields like they were made of paper. It tore through the armor plating, through deck after deck, through the ship's reactor core. The massive warship broke apart in a brilliant flash of light, its pieces tumbling through space. 3,000 Coalition soldiers died in an instant. The rest of the Coalition fleet stopped firing. Suddenly, none of them wanted to be the next target. On the diplomatic station, Velshan stood frozen, staring at the spot where his flagship had been moments before. His mind could not process what he had just witnessed. The humans were supposed to be weak. Their technology was supposed to be primitive. How could they have built something like this? One of his officers spoke, his voice shaking. "High Arbiter, the human vessel is hailing us. They are demanding your response." Velshan swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. With trembling hands, he activated the communication channel. "Commander Yu," he began, trying to keep his voice steady. "There has been a misunderstanding. We did not intend to cause problems. You took our ambassador hostage," Heon interrupted, her voice like ice. "You threatened to destroy our colonies. You opened fire on my ship. I do not see any misunderstanding. I see an act of war." "Please," Velshan said, and the word tasted like ashes in his mouth. He had never begged before in his long life. "We can discuss this. We can reach an agreement. Release Ambassador Kang. Now, you have 60 seconds. Velshan gave the order immediately. The guards outside the waiting room received the command and stepped aside. Taemin and Bora were escorted to their shuttle without a word. As their shuttle launched from the station, Taemin looked back at the Coalition fleet. The ships were scattered, their formation broken. They looked like frightened animals. He felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief at being free, anger at how he had been treated, and something else. Pride. Humanity had built the Reckoning in secret. While he had been negotiating, hoping for peace, others had been preparing for war. Part of him felt betrayed that he had not been told. But another part understood. The Coalition would never have respected words alone. They only respected power. The shuttle docked with the Reckoning and Taman stepped into the hangar bay. Commander Yu was waiting for him, along with a security team. She looked tired but satisfied. Ambassador Kang, she said, offering her hand. Welcome aboard. Taman shook her hand firmly. Thank you, Commander. You saved my life. You may have saved all of humanity. Heian nodded. That is my job. But we are not finished yet. The Coalition knows about the Reckoning now. They know we can fight back. What happens next depends on how they react. Taman looked at the tactical display on the wall. The Coalition fleet was still holding position, but they were not advancing. They were waiting, deciding. What do you think they will do? He asked. Heian considered the question carefully. They thought we were weak. We proved them wrong. Now they are scared. Scared beings do unpredictable things. They might back down, or they might call in reinforcements and try to crush us with numbers. And if they do? Taman asked. Heian met his eyes steadily. Then we show them that the Reckoning is not the only dreadnought humanity has built. She was bluffing. The Reckoning was the only ship of its kind, the product of years of research and massive resources. But the Coalition did not know that. Let them wonder. Let them fear. In the station's command center, Velshan was receiving reports from across Coalition space. News of the battle had already spread. 17 different species were demanding explanations. Some were frightened. Others were curious. A few were angry that Velshan had provoked such a powerful enemy. The council was convening an emergency session. Velshan had been recalled to the capital to explain his actions. His career was over. He knew that. But more importantly, everything had changed. The humans were not the primitive species he had thought. They were builders, innovators. They had studied Coalition technology and then surpassed it. And if they could build one ship like the Reckoning, they could build more. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in a single day. Ji-Wan found Heiyun in the observation deck hours later. The commander stood alone looking out at the stars. You did well today, Heiyun said without turning around. Ji-Wan smiled slightly. I was terrified. I kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if the main cannon had misfired? What if their weapons had been stronger than we calculated? But they were not, Heian said. Your designs held. Your calculations were correct. You built something incredible, Ji-Wan. You should be proud. Ji-Wan nodded slowly. I just hope we never have to use it again. Heiyun finally turned to look at her. Peace is built on strength. We showed them we have strength. Now maybe they will give us peace. They stood together watching the distant Coalition fleet. The ships were pulling back one by one, retreating to a safe distance. For now, the shooting had stopped. What came next would be decided in the days and weeks ahead. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species in the Coalition had heard about the battle at Talvenus Station. A human ship appearing from nowhere had destroyed the Coalition's most powerful warship with a single shot. On the insectoid homeworld of Kree, the Queen's advisors gathered in emergency session. They watched the recordings of the battle over and over, trying to understand what they were seeing. The energy readings make no sense, one scientist said. That projectile was moving at 12% the speed of light. The power required to accelerate something that large to that speed should have torn the human ship apart. But it did not, the Queen replied. Which means the humans have solved problems we thought were impossible. We have been studying them for 3 years, and we saw nothing like this. They hit it well. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. Fear and respect mixed in equal measure. The Coalition had ruled unchallenged for centuries. Now a newcomer species had proven they could stand against it. On Earth, the reaction was different. In the government chambers, politicians argued loudly about what Commander Yu had done. She acted without authorization, one minister shouted. She started a war that could destroy us all. She saved Ambassador Kang's life, another replied. The Coalition was holding him hostage. They were preparing to attack our colonies. What was she supposed to do? Wait for permission while our people died? The Prime Minister, an older woman named Yunji, listened to both sides. Finally, she raised her hand for silence. Commander Yu made a difficult decision in an impossible situation. We can debate whether it was the right decision later. Right now, we need to decide what comes next. The Coalition knows about the reckoning. They know we can defend ourselves. How do we turn this moment into lasting peace? Ambassador Kang, who had returned to Earth immediately after the battle, spoke up. We need to negotiate from a position of strength. The Coalition respects power. They will not listen to words alone anymore. But we also need to show them we are not warmongers. We defended ourselves, but we do not want conquest. We want cooperation. Yunji nodded slowly. Then you will return to the negotiating table, Ambassador. But this time the reckoning stays visible. It will orbit the station where everyone can see it. A reminder that we can defend ourselves if necessary. 2 weeks later, a new Coalition representative arrived at a different diplomatic station. This one was in neutral space, far from any military bases. Kree, the insectoid diplomat, had been chosen specifically because she had no history with humans and no loyalty to Velshan. She was practical, logical, and very intelligent. She had studied the battle recordings carefully. She knew that humanity posed a real threat if provoked, and she had no intention of provoking them. When Taemin entered the negotiation chamber, the atmosphere was completely different from his first meeting. Kree stood and bowed respectfully. There were no guards with weapons, no threats, just two diplomats meeting as equals. Ambassador Kang, Kree said, her voice translated through a device. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I apologize for the treatment you received from High Arbiter Velshan. His actions were unwise. The Coalition Council has removed him from his position. Taemin sat down across from her. I appreciate the apology, but words are not enough. The Coalition threatened my people. You need to prove that things have changed, I understand, Kree replied. Let me be direct. The Coalition wishes to offer humanity full membership. You would have all the rights and protections of any member species. Your colonies would be recognized as sovereign human territory. You would have voting rights on the council. We would establish trade agreements and cultural exchanges. It was everything Taemin had hoped for in his first meeting. But he had learned to be suspicious of generous offers. And what does the Coalition want in return? Kree did not hesitate. Technology sharing. Not your weapon systems, we understand those must remain secure. But your propulsion technology, your materials science, your medical research, these would benefit all Coalition species. And we would ask that humanity participate in Coalition security operations. There are pirates, raiders, and hostile species in the outer regions. We could use ships like the Reckoning to protect trade routes. Taemin considered this carefully. It was a fair trade, but he remembered what Prime Minister Yunji had told him. Negotiate from strength. We need more than membership. We need guarantees. A formal treaty stating that Coalition forces will never enter human space without permission. Protection for human shipping from Coalition taxes and inspections. And access to Coalition scientific databases and research facilities. Kree's mandibles clicked together in what might have been surprise. Those are significant demands. Ambassador, and humanity has significant capabilities, Taemin replied calmly. You want our cooperation? These are our terms. Kree was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke again. I will need to consult with the council, but I believe they will agree. The Coalition gains more from having humanity as an ally than as an enemy. There is one more thing, Taemin said. We want a formal apology from the Coalition Council for Velshan's actions. In writing, to be broadcast across all Coalition space. This was a harder request. It meant the Coalition would have to admit they had been wrong, publicly. But Kree surprised him by nodding. I will recommend it. The Council made a mistake. Acknowledging it is the first step toward rebuilding trust. The negotiations continued for 3 more days. Every detail was discussed, debated, and refined. But finally, an agreement was reached. Humanity would join the Coalition as a full member with special protections and privileges. In exchange, they would share certain technologies and provide military support when needed. The treaty was signed in a ceremony broadcast across both human space and Coalition territory. Leaders from 17 species watched as Taemin and Kree placed their marks on the document. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. They had avoided war. They had gained respect. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, but not everyone was happy. In some of the outer colonies, protesters gathered. They carried signs saying things like, no foreign control and Earth first. They worried that joining the Coalition meant losing their independence. On the academic networks, Philosophers and ethicists debated what the reckoning represented. Had humanity become the very thing they feared? A species that solved problems with overwhelming force? Commander Yu, now promoted to admiral, read these debates with mixed feelings. She understood the concerns. Power was dangerous. It corrupted. It turned good intentions into tyranny. But she also knew that the galaxy was not a kind place. It was full of beings like Velshon, who saw weakness as an invitation to exploit. Without the reckoning, humanity would have been conquered or destroyed. She was in her new office reviewing reports when Jiwan entered. The young engineer looked exhausted but excited. "Admiral, I have news. The government has approved funding for 3 more Dreadnoughts. They want me to lead the design team." Yu smiled. "Congratulations, you have earned it. What will you do differently this time?" Jiwan sat down, pulling out a tablet covered in notes and diagrams. The reckoning was built for defense. These new ships need to be more versatile. Better sensors, faster engines, improved communications. We need to be able to respond to threats anywhere in human space. "Just remember," Yu said seriously, "these ships are tools. Powerful tools. But tools are only as good or bad as the people using them. We build them to protect, not to conquer." Jiwan nodded. "I know. But it is hard not to wonder. What if someday we become like the Coalition? What if we start using our power to push others around? Then people like you and me need to speak up," Yu replied. "We need to remember why we built these ships. Not for glory or conquest. For survival and protection. As long as we remember that, we will be okay." Jiwan left to begin her work and Yu returned to her reports. But her words stayed with her. Power without wisdom was tyranny. Humanity had power now. The real test would be learning to use it wisely. 6 months after the treaty signing, humanity's place in the galaxy had changed completely. Earth now hosted embassies from 12 different species. Human ships traveled freely through Coalition space. Students from Earth attended universities on alien worlds, and alien students studied at human institutions. But the most significant change was how other species viewed humanity. The image of the Reckoning destroying the Coalition flagship had spread everywhere. Some species saw humans as potential protectors. Others saw them as a threat. Small, independent worlds that had once been bullied by Coalition powers began reaching out to Earth. They wanted protection. They wanted alliances. They wanted to be on the winning side if another conflict broke out. Ambassador Taman found himself busier than ever. His office in the New Earth Embassy station received dozens of requests every day. He stood at his window now, looking out at the steady stream of ships coming and going. His assistant, Bora, entered with another stack of diplomatic requests. 3 more worlds asking for defense treaties, she said, setting the documents on his desk. And the Talon Republic wants to discuss purchasing human weapons technology. Taman sighed. "We are not selling weapons. That is not who we are. The Talon are offering a considerable amount of resources. Earth could use them. And if we sell them weapons, what happens when they use those weapons to conquer their neighbors? We become responsible for that violence." He shook his head firmly. "No. Send them a polite refusal." This was the difficult part of having power. Every decision had consequences. Every alliance made enemies elsewhere. Taman was learning that peace was harder to maintain than war was to start. On Earth, Prime Minister Yunji faced similar challenges. She met with her cabinet to discuss the future of human expansion. "We need to establish clear policies," one minister argued. "How do we decide which species to ally with? Which requests for protection do we honor? We cannot defend everyone. We defend those who cannot defend themselves," Yunji replied. "We intervene against aggression and exploitation. But we do not impose our will on others. The Coalition made that mistake. We will not repeat it." "That is a fine line to walk," another minister said. "How do we know when we are protecting and when we are controlling?" Yunji had no easy answer. It was something they would need to figure out through experience and mistakes. Admiral Heon Yu now commanded a fleet of 5 capital ships, including the Reckoning. The other dreadnoughts were still under construction, but smaller warships had been built and deployed across human space. She stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, which now served as the flagship of Earth's defensive fleet. They were on patrol near the outer colonies, showing the flag and reminding pirates that human space was protected. Jiwan joined her on the bridge. The engineer was still adjusting to her new role as head of the Advanced Weapons Division. She carried a tablet with updated designs for the new dreadnoughts. The first of the new ships will launch in 8 months, Jiwan reported. We have incorporated everything we learned from the reckoning. They will be faster, more efficient, and carry better sensors. Good, you said. But remember, every ship we build changes the balance of power. We need to be careful not to start an arms race. The Coalition is already building new warships, Jiwan pointed out. They are trying to match our technology. If we stop building, we might lose our advantage, I know. That is the trap of power. You can never have enough of it, because someone else is always trying to get more. But we have to try to break that cycle. Otherwise, we just end up like the Coalition, building bigger weapons until someone uses them. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. The tactical officer called out, "Admiral, we are receiving a distress call. A civilian transport is under attack by raiders in the Kelvin system." "Human transport?" you asked. "No, Admiral. It is a Vrelian ship. They are requesting assistance." The Vrelians were a small species not part of the Coalition. They had no military to speak of. If the raiders destroyed their transport, hundreds of civilians would die. You did not hesitate. "Set course for Kelvin system, maximum speed. Prepare to engage hostile forces." Jiwan looked at her in surprise. "Admiral, they are not human. We have no treaty obligation to help them. They are people," you replied simply, "and they need help. That is enough." The reckoning jumped to faster than light speed, crossing the distance to the Kelvin system in minutes. When they arrived, they found 3 raider ships surrounding a damaged transport. The raiders were firing on the helpless vessel, preparing to board it. The reckoning emerged from jump space directly between the raiders and their target. Its massive form blocked the raiders' weapons fire. You broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Haeon Yu of the United Earth Ship Reckoning. You are attacking a civilian vessel in violation of galactic law. Stand down immediately or be destroyed." The raiders recognized the ship instantly. Everyone in the galaxy knew what the reckoning could do. They turned and fled without firing a single shot. The Vrelian transport captain sent a message of gratitude that was almost embarrassingly grateful. You assured them it was no trouble and offered to escort them to their destination. Later that day, news of the rescue spread across the local systems. It was a small incident, but it sent a message. Humanity would use its power to protect the innocent, not just their own people. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Taman received an unexpected visitor. Kree, the Coalition diplomat, arrived at the Earth Embassy. "Ambassador Kang," she said, "I have a proposal from the Coalition Council. They would like to offer you a permanent seat on the Security Council." Taman was surprised. The Security Council was the most powerful body in the Coalition, responsible for major decisions about war, peace, and galactic policy. "Only 5 species had permanent seats. Why now?" he asked. "Because humanity has proven itself," Kree replied, "not just in battle but in character. Your Admiral Yu rescued the Vrelian transport. Your government has refused to sell weapons technology, even when offered substantial profit. You have power, but you use it responsibly. That is rare in the galaxy." Taman considered this carefully. A seat on the Security Council would give humanity significant influence over galactic affairs, but it would also come with responsibilities and expectations. "I will need to consult with my government, but I believe we would be honored to accept." That evening, Taman stood in the observation deck looking out at the stars. So much had changed since that first failed negotiation with Velshan. He had believed that words alone could build peace. He had been wrong, but not completely wrong. Diplomacy still mattered. It was still the foundation of peace, but now diplomacy had strength behind it. The Coalition respected human words because they knew humans could back them up with action. Admiral Yu joined him at the viewport. They had become friends over the past months, brought together by shared experiences and challenges. "You heard about the Security Council seat?" Taman asked. "I did. Congratulations. You will do well." "I was thinking about that first meeting," Taman said. "When Velshan tried to intimidate us, I was so sure I could convince him through reason and goodwill." "I was naive." "You were not naive," you corrected gently. "You were hopeful. There is a difference. We need people like you, people who believe in peace and try to find it. But we also need to be ready when peace fails. I suppose we balance each other out," Taman said with a slight smile. "You keep us safe. I keep us diplomatic, that is the idea. Neither approach works alone. We need both the diplomat and the Dreadnought. They stood in comfortable silence watching the stars. The reckoning hung in orbit nearby, a dark shape against the brightness of space. Taman thought about the future. Humanity was still young on the galactic stage. They would make mistakes. They would face new challenges. But they had proven something important. They had shown that strength and wisdom could exist together. That power could be used for protection rather than conquest. That a species could be both peaceful and strong. It would not always be easy. There would be times when the line between protection and control blurred. Times when difficult choices had to be made. But as long as people like Taman and you worked together, as long as they remembered why they had built the reckoning in the first place, humanity would find its way. Do you ever regret it? Taman asked suddenly. Firing that shot? Starting everything that came after? You thought about the question seriously. I regret that it was necessary. I regret the lives lost. But no, I do not regret defending our people. Given the same situation, I would make the same choice. Even knowing everything that followed? Especially knowing everything that followed. We have responsibilities now. Expectations. But we also have respect. We have a voice. We have a future. That is worth the burden of power. Taman nodded slowly. He understood now. The reckoning was not just a weapon. It was a statement, a declaration that humanity would not be bullied or conquered, that they would stand up for themselves and for others who could not stand alone. Diplomacy was still the goal. Peace was still the dream. But now, backed by the strength of ships like the Reckoning, those goals were achievable. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity was not weak. They were not naive. They were builders and fighters, diplomats and warriors. They preferred peace, but they were prepared for war.